be back.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Alliance Guys podcast, our presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. I'm your host, Jay Cal, and with me, of course, is the champion of domestic tranquility, the modern-day hero, Kevin Doglas. Hey, Kevin, I got a surprise for you, buddy.
Lay it on me.
So, I got a grouchy guy to come back on the show.
What? No, you
DKM.
Don't yeah.
DKM.
Woo.
Who?
What? Who's that guy? DKM.
Back.
Welcome back. It's been a while. It's been a minute. Is there anything you want to say to your detractors before we start?
I have detractors. Everybody loves me.
Everybody loves you. You're like Raymond.
No, I'm better than Raymond. I have more brains.
Well, there it is. This is the Alliance Guys podcast, and what we're doing tonight is recapping the Generation Clash, which was episode 15 of the NWA Power. Before we get started on tonight's show, I do want to wish a speedy recovery to one Sal Renaro. Sal Renaro broke his arm in a match outside of the NWA. The young kid did have an injury and will be out for some time. And, you know, Kevin, as a former wrestler yourself, that's got to be kind of a little shakes the foundation a little bit when you're doing something that you love and you get injured. We wish Mr. Renaro all the best and a quick and speedy recovery. This is the 15th episode of the Generation Clash. And of course, guys, this is the show. This is the episode that leads us into NWA Hard Times. This was a bonus-sized episode. That's why we brought our bonus-sized co-host back onto the show this week. And
watch it.
The show starts off with Robert Gibson, who says that his partner, Ricky Morton, has faced some of the best world champions in the world. And for his partner to win this title, well, that just means everything. And honestly, I felt a little sick. I felt a little nauseated because I've seen this before. Guys, I've seen this before. This is an old, stale act. Smoky Mountain Wrestling just a few years ago. 7 years to be exact. Rob Conway, the world's heavyweight champion, the real world's heavyweight champion, came in to defend the title against who? Ricky Morton. And what was the promise of that show? What was the angle that they came at? It was one last chance for Ricky Morton. One last chance, one more opportunity. Now, he got that opportunity at the Smoky Mountain Cup by beating the foursome of Damian Wayne, who at the time was a former national champion, Matt Sigmund, who's got one of the biggest foreheads you've ever seen, and former 5-time NWA World Champion Scrap Iron Adam Pearce. Ricky Morton pinned Adam Pearce to win that opportunity to wrestle for Rob Conway's World Heavyweight Championship. Guys, I was having flashbacks. It was happening all over again. 7 years later, NWA Pro, we still have Ricky Morton still challenging for a title way past his prime.
I thought this, what's funny is I don't know exactly the time frame that happened when he did that in the Smoky Mountain, but it just, the thought of him pinning Adam Pearce ever makes me throw up in my mouth. The fact that he did it during that time frame probably would have made me even more angry if I would have known about it or even cared. But the fact that it's still happening here in 2020, I have not pulled any punches that I think the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton, are using their leverage as legendary wrestlers and their savvy as knowing how to work the booking crew to take advantage of what really should be a time to focus on the younger wrestlers that are the up-and-coming wrestlers, much like the one we just got that we had a good conversation with, Ricky Starks. Guys like that need to be in the spotlight, not guys that are 2 decades minimum past their prime. I've said it many times at length Just because you can get a pop or just because of people like you doesn't mean you deserve top, main event ring time. Legends can wrestle legends, but let's keep them out of the ring with wrestlers that are relevant today, because it's just bad for the television, bad for the business as a whole. It's my opinion.
DK?
You know what it boils down to for me was I just didn't care.
Yeah.
I mean, he came out, he spoke. I couldn't repeat a single word he said. It was just like, okay, there's Robert Gibson. Move on.
Right.
So this was the introduction to the show, and if it wasn't my responsibility to recap the show, I might have been inclined to turn it off right then and there. Kevin wasn't impressed, and nor was DKM. And now at this point, I do like to indicate how many people were watching during the live stream. I think it's important to see what camaraderie is there and what fan base the NWA is building. There's 5,000 people watching this show. Now, that number is normally about 8,000 towards the end of it, but 5,000 to kick off the show is pretty good. The first match we get is a rematch of Into the Fire. And again, we have been seeing an influx of good women wrestling, hashtag NWA Girl Power. We got Tasha Steelz taking on Thunder Rosa. Now, Tasha put on a valiant effort, but it was the same result. Rosa mostly just dominated this match. I do want to point out that our next NWA Women's Champion was also recently won her first wrestling championship in Japan when she competed for the TJP, which I believe stands for Tokyo Joshi Promotion. And she won the International Princess title, defeating Maki. And that was back on January 5th, and I think that might be a precursor to what we're going to see on Friday when she faces Alison Kay. But getting back to the match, not a bad match. Tasha still looks really good. She is ahead of the class when it comes to some of the female wrestlers in the NWA. But again, this is the Thunder Rosa show, and she showed why. Clearly the MVP. D-Cam, what were your thoughts on that match?
I mean, I like the match for what it was. Started out with a, little bit of grappling as they kind of tried to make Steel look more than she was. And then, Thunder Rosa beat the crap out of her and pinned her, which is what it needed to be.
Right.
Right.
I mean, you're not going to say any match like that is a great match, but,
No.
It was a good match for what it was supposed to be.
100% agree. I am impressed with Tasha Steelz. I didn't know much of her until she started to make headway here a little bit with the NWA. Jay, you and I were really excited just to see that we were going to get a singles women's match, and of course that it was going to be Thunder Rosa at Into the Fire. And now to get to see honestly, man, it doesn't always have to be that complicated. Sometimes a good match with some good in-ring wrestling, and even though it was a little bit more one-sided than the pay-per-view match, it was still very solid women's wrestling. I would like to see a little more of Tasha Steelz in terms of or is it Steelz? Tasha Steelz. Steelz. Tasha Steelz. Hopefully that's not a verb. But hopefully I'd like to see. I didn't know if it was a good joke or not. I'll try to run with it. You can edit it off if it's bad. But
no, I think it's fine.
wonder. I wonder. I think there's a little more. I'd like again see a little more sampling of her. I think I think the haves and have-nots in terms of the NWA women are definitely starting to kind of place themselves in a pecking order. I think we already know who the top of the food chain is in terms of Alison Kay. We were both pretty impressed with Melina's showing last week. I think we think we agree that Thunder Rosa is top of the class, and I just think that Marty Bell, Tasha Steelz, Ashley Vox, there's a big gap between there, but I think you're never going to get these girls developing into more than they are if they don't get a little chance, if they don't get some ring time to wrestle and show and show they can and show that they can improve. And as I've said many times, wrestlers to me are gauged in 3 tiers. What do you look like? Tasha Steelz looks good. How are your promo skills? They're not bad. And what do you do in the ring? And so I think there's a lot of potential there for her. That we just need to see a little. She just needs to have the opportunity to grow a little bit, and maybe a one-on-one match with, say, Ashley Vox would be something that could be interesting to watch.
Now they do consider this show the end of season 2, so apparently each series of shows leading up to the pay-per-view is going to be considered a season. So we got 8 episodes leading up to season 1. We got 7 episodes leading up to the end of season 2. And so it'll be interesting to see how the show kind of formats itself in season 3, if we're going to see different matchups, different feuds emerging. And obviously a lot of this will kind of be fleshed out as season 3 kicks off. Now, at this point, there's 6,057 people watching the live stream, and we get another one of these clickbait galley interviews, and it tends to get a little awkward once again with Royce I6 and his girl May, and it's a little awkward for me. We get the interview where Galley points out that, hey, if Strictly Business's stock is rising so high, it's not because of you, Royce, because you've got 2 losses to Tim Storm. Kind of walked out on the James Storm match, and then Galley's implying that he's losing because of the distraction that May is, and then Royce just blurts out that they haven't had sex yet.
Oh my God.
When we've got a show that's 90 minutes because there's so much that they need to cram into one show, this would have been one of the segments I think they could have done without. I don't know I'll be honest, I kind of do know where this story is going because I heard some things, but this was a waste of time. It did nothing to put Royce I6 over. It did nothing to make him more interesting. If anything, I feel bad for the guy.
Right. Well, I personally, I don't know. We typically skim over parts of the show that don't do a whole lot for anybody, and I would say this would be one of those parts of the show where it's just hard to even comment. I don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent. I'm probably going to take a DK position on this and say I just wasn't interested, and agree with you that what are we using TV time for this for?
DK?
Yeah, I don't like silly and cute and something that has nothing to do with anything. I mean, I'm glad his tie matched her outfit, I guess. Next.
The show takes a turn for the positive because we have yet another qualifying match for the TV title tournament. We've got 6,500 people watching, and this is where the wrestling happens, guys. This is where it gets...
Wait. We're not going to talk about Austin Idol's because you got no heat, brother.
Oh,
we're going to talk about his commercial.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it. I was trying to move on to the wrestling.
Let's move on to the wrestling. I just wanted to chime in on that.
It's not kayfabe cocktail, so I'm okay with it.
Honestly, this particular commercial makes me laugh. I don't know why. I guess just the way he says the word brother, and of how many wrestlers over my career whose faces pop into my head when he's saying these things. Can't get a crowd reaction. I think of a lot of wrestlers, and then of course I hear the old school wrestlers when I broke in the late 90s because everybody in the locker room said brother.
Right.
It wasn't like it is now, or at least when I retired, where everybody was bro, this and bro. Back then it was still brother. So when he says you got no heat, brother, I don't know, man. I can just hear Killer Tim or the Bullman Downs or the Team Extreme or some of these guys that I broke into the wrestling business and they were kind of on their way out, with 15 brothers in one sentence getting dropped. Brother said to the brother, hey, brother. I mean, I don't know, it made me laugh. I thought it was funny, and at least it wasn't too inappropriate. But if we want to move on to the wrestling, I'm okay with that.
So now we did have a good effort in that Into the Fire rematch, but nothing was as hard hitting on this show as Latimer and Murdoch. I mean, it starts hard, it starts fast. Latimer is dominating early on. What did I have here written down? It says, nobody's handled Trevor like this. I mean, he's literally, that pop-up powerbomb was a thing of beauty. And I know Latimer's a big dude, but so is Trevor Murdoch. And so for him to literally toss Trevor Murdoch up in the air like a rag doll, I was impressed. And that's the first time I've really been overly impressed by what Latimer has been able to do in the ring. And, of course, the match is all Latimer, but Murdoch gets the win because he's the wily veteran. Sure. Gets the win with a handful of tights. I was all about this match. I really thought it was great. DCam, tell me, what did you think about Latimer versus Murdoch in that TV title tournament?
Well, it was exciting. It was not what I expected.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good ass-kicking match. It did set a trend that followed the rest of the night, but
yep.
Hey, I don't really have anything negative to say about it.
And I mean, in 6 minutes and 5 seconds, they told a pretty good story. Modern day hero, what was your take?
I like. Okay, I'm just off. I don't know if I'm not allowed to say other wrestlers from other promotions.
No, you're fine.
I'm a big Drew McIntyre fan. I just really like what Drew McIntyre does.
So is Billy Corgan.
The way he presents himself. I feel like, that when I look at Latimer, he has a lot of the same qualities that I like in Drew McIntyre. Well-built guy, very athletic, super aggressive. Really knows. I mean, you may not. These are one of those little details that you don't notice until somebody points it out. But he knows how to work the camera. And when I say work the camera, it means that his body positioning, his ring positioning. When he sets moves up, he wants you to see what he's doing. That kind of stuff. I mean, he just really has a lot going for him in the ring. Of course, we're all big fans of Trevor Murdoch on this show, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And so and we've cried for this a few times here on the show that, it was a TV match. It felt like we were watching a TV match. The speed, the hard hitting, the impact of it, no pun intended. Just all the way around, it felt like a big league wrestling match with a couple of big league wrestlers. And I think a lot of the other locker room guys that are on that level, that are of that caliber, can look at a match like that and go, okay, that's how all these matches should look. They should all have this certain level of urgency, of crispness. Sometimes I've watched these 6-minute matches and watched them exchange, wrist locks and headlocks for 2 minutes and going, what are you doing? Watching these two guys get out there and make it feel like it meant something, kind of makes some of these other matches feel a little bit slow and almost uninspired. So hats off to both of these guys.
Gimmick.
Yeah.
Say that again, DK.
I said this match fit the gimmick.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's a 6-minute thing. Yep.
Absolutely.
I agree. Well said.
Things take a turn for the worse because now with 7,000 people watching, we get the Melina and Alison K confrontation. Now, this is where the show, I don't understand. Normally, the champion makes the challenger jump through hoops to have a title match. For whatever reason, Melina has some stroke here in the NWA because she's going to start dictating what's going to happen next. First of all, she slips and uses a dog curse word, to quote my friend Austin Idol. And she uses a relatively inappropriate term for television, but we're on YouTube, so they still beeped it. But anyways, she drops her title match for Thunder Rosa to get that opportunity at the pay-per-view, which again is just kind of messing with Alison Kay, because 1 minute she's out there challenging Alison Kay for the title, the next minute she's, giving Thunder Rosa her match. So it just kind of muddies up the waters a bit. But in order for Alison Kay to defend her title in the pay-per-view against Thunder Rosa, she has to beat Marty Bell in a no DQ match. And as Stu Bennett said, and DCAM pointed this out to me earlier today, that match didn't make any sense. And the former best friends are beating each other. I'm going to say this, Marty Bell looked a heck of a lot more physical in this match. She looked probably the best she's looked on TV. But at the end of the day, Alison Kay gets the win and sets up the pay-per-view match for her and Thunder Rosa. Mr. Modern Day Hero, what were your thoughts, Kevin?
I think a lot of times with wrestlers that aren't, and when we interviewed Ricky Starks, he talked about wanting to have chemistry in the ring with anybody. And right. I think what you see here is you see Marty Bell and Alison Kay have some in-ring chemistry. Mm-hmm. And that's probably why you saw much more confidence, better timing, better, just a better overall product with Marty Bell, which is a compliment to Alison Kay, but also a detriment to Marty Bell that she's been wrestling for a while now. And at this point, you need to be able to have a basic match against anybody and look like you know what you're doing. And, for you to have to wrestle somebody you're comfortable wrestling, to have that happen, again, I kind of think it shows where she ranks in the rank and file in terms of the women's division. And it is a shame because in reality, Marty Bell has a very high ceiling in terms of potential. She has a great look. She's very athletic. She has the ability to have good matches if she's on her game. And again, I think she can elicit emotion, which can lead to good promos, stories that matter. And right. I just feel like maybe as little as they've given her, they've given her a pretty good spot here on the show. And but it's not a big spot, but it's a good spot, like she's in the top storyline in the women's division. You would just like to see more from her in terms of maximizing the time that they're giving her as a whole. You guys talk very highly of Alison Kay. I'm not overly impressed with her, but I'm not underwhelmed either. Okay. I just to this point still, again, my barometer for women's wrestling, obviously coming from, getting to wrestle one of the greatest women's wrestlers of all time 5 days a week for 2 years. And then, of course, wrestling her all over the country in different independent wrestling promotions. Speaking of Jazz, former NWA Women's World Champion, she's just not at that level at all to me, as far as from what I can see. And there are some women out there that can, hang. And I think Thunder Rosa is certainly one of them. And I just think she's a notch above Alison Kay in terms of just pure athleticism. Alison Kay's physical, but she's not overly intimidating to me. She doesn't seem like that girl that will beat you up even as a dude, as where Thunder Rosa seems like she might take your head off if you're 300 pounds. Like I said, I think she's a tick below what a world champion should be, though she is a good world champion. I just don't think she's a great one, and that's my 2 cents. DK, what about you? What do you think of the women's match?
Well, first the good, and the good was that, as you guys pointed out, it's probably the best Marty Bell's looked. I mean, they did look like two former friends going after each other. There was a quasi good reason for it to be no disqualification, since it was kind of this grudge match. I really feel like they do too many no disqualification matches on for their show.
Yeah.
So, some of which make no sense whatsoever. And they're all kind of the same formula. At some point, they're going to brawl up into the crowd. At some point, someone's going to get a chair. So, that's the good. The bad, you guys have already pointed out. I love Stu Bennett for pointing it out. Just being completely blunt, saying these weren't his words, but he was basically saying this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
He goes, she has to win a match for the right to defend her title. Huh?
And the thing that killed me about that is
I'm sorry. Not only does she have to win a match for the right to defend her title, but if Melina and Thunder Rosa's partner in this group wins, then Thunder Rosa doesn't get her title match.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the exact opposite of what Nick Aldis tries to do. Hey, you guys have to win some six-man tag team match to get a title shot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is, you have to beat one of my people so that you can defend the title against another one of my people. What the hell?
And I also want to add to this is just one more reason why the NWA needs some sort of commissioner or authority figure, because I don't like the fact that wrestlers are making their own matches. Now, I get the world champion has a lot of stroke, but this isn't the world champion. This is the challenger to the women's title who's been able to manipulate what's going on. I just don't care for that. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to move on.
Well, I do want to throw in one little thing here.
Go ahead.
Because I think this is the best example in the show. And that is one of the reasons that some fans were worried that a guy that used to work with WWE and used to work with TNA running the show was this type of stupid gimmicky stuff.
Yeah.
And, this is the stuff that makes us go, man, please, no, never do this again.
Right.
So you can move on.
Well, I can't help it. I gotta interject again here, because again, I think you guys are pointing something out that we always talk about how there are certain things that this show could do better, and again, you can kind of eliminate some of these problems by having longer matches and simpler storylines, and because in letting the wrestlers wrestle some. I just think these things get solved with telling stories in the ring instead of using all your time having these convoluted storylines that to some point are hard to follow. Maybe one is fine, but every single storyline, you could save some of this time and put it into your in-ring product, which obviously I can beat on that drum all day long.
So now we've gained 643 more people watching the show, and they're watching a promo with Joe Galli, and out comes, David Marquez, and out comes the Pope with Eddie Kingston. Conspicuous by his absence is Homicide. Pope brings up the point, well, he doesn't lose, and if the Pope can push you, well, he's going to push you. He's still searching for his superpowers. He's still searching for his 4 horsemen. So now we get Eddie Kingston, and understandably a little upset and quick to kind of push Marquez away. And look, there's no excuses. They lost. Maybe they weren't ready. Maybe Homicide wasn't ready, but they lost and they own up to it. Again, this Pope promo, why do we have this guy with so much charisma, talking for another guy who's got a lot of charisma, and I'm just not, I don't care. To quote DKM, I just don't care. DK, what did you think about the promo?
There's the first thing I noticed is exactly what you said. Why are they putting a manager type guy whose job is typically to talk for those who aren't necessarily the best promo with somebody else who's a good promo?
Right.
It didn't make sense to me. But the other thing was, I didn't understand what his purpose was. Right. I mean, they're out there talking about, he's looking for his big group, the guy that he's kind of been with. It's like, okay, yeah, I understand, but maybe we weren't ready, but we own the fact that we lost. Okay, well, okay, now what?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what your purpose is. I don't know what you're after, and I don't know what you want. I mean, are you going to challenge somebody? Are you guys still owning the tag teams? Are you still a tag team? I don't know what's going on, and you've done absolutely nothing to help me figure it out.
Can I address the elephant in the room here?
Absolutely.
Go, Kevin, go.
What was the 100 VHS tapes for $9.99? What was that? Did y'all see that commercial?
Yeah, that's just more shenanigans. I don't know. There was so much wrestling on the show, I just kind of ignored that stuff.
But I go through this stuff and I go, okay, what if somebody is like really trying to give this show a chance? If they see something like that and you just kind of go, what are these guys all about? What the hell is that? Excuse me, language, but I just kind of go, what?
Now, you might not remember this, Kevin. Sorry, I almost called you DK. You might not remember this, but Josephus, in his introduction to the NWA universe, was always led by a spiritual advisor who advised him on life and advised him into getting into matches that he probably didn't belong in. And Josephus, as you've kind of seen over the weeks, has been lost on television without this spiritual advisor. Was promised that she'd come back, but still hasn't. I don't know if a video like this is just to kind of remind everyone that that character still exists in this universe, or if it was just to kill time. Either way, look, I sent the message the first week of television, the NWA, I will pay for an Alliance ad. Let's put an alliance-wrestling.com advertisement into the show. At least that would be beneficial to the people watching it. They can visit the website and help bring a larger audience to this podcast, because we're telling it like it is, and you guys should be listening. But ultimately, the video was unnecessary, and honestly, this promo was too.
Right. Agreed. And I'm a little confused, as DK is confused, as we all are a little confused. Eddie Kingston is kind of growing on me in terms of I just like the genuineness of him as a character.
Yeah.
He just feels very genuine to me, and I really like that. And Pope, is he trying to channel like his Dusty Rhodes impersonation kind of thing? I'm not sure with him either. I know he was a name and maybe he was what he was, but he just hasn't done a whole lot for me on the show as in general. And again, like we were just saying, we've used a lot of TV time and a lot of our air on parts of the show that we kind of scratch our head and go, why are they doing this? When there's been good wrestling on this show.
Yeah.
And when they've been in the ring so far, there's been not a whole lot to complain about when we've actually had wrestling.
Well, hold on a minute, because we're going back into the ring. We've got 8,000 people watching a karate demonstration. Now, I actually asked for this after seeing the question mark for the first time, thinking, wow, how great would it be if they did promos like they did with LaBelle back in the day, doing, kung fu demonstrations in front of the Los Angeles audience. But this was not that. This was an entire waste of time. The grandiosity didn't fit. We didn't need all of this. The Mongrovian 2x4. It just seems like a whole lot of nothing for Starks to come in and hit the shooter with the 2x4 and say that he hasn't forgotten. And I didn't want to talk about this when we did talk to Ricky, but I think the NWA created a perfect out that if he does not win the TV title, he is already wedged really close to that national championship. And I think maybe that's why we got this promo, although I wish they would have done anything different than this. KD, what's your thoughts?
No, I can't. I want to hear DK's thoughts because I'm very eager to hear what DK thinks about this because I don't think this is his favorite type of wrestling show segment. So DK, I got to hear from you.
All right. Look, Aaron Stevens is brilliant at what he does.
Yes, agreed. I'm a big Aaron Stevens fan.
I liked Aaron Stevens back when he was Mizdow. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the stuff that got him over as the Miz's lackey or whatever, Mizdow character, was stuff that he did on his own. That's not stuff creative came up with. He came up with most of it and got himself over. And I was a big fan back then. I hated him in TNA. They totally screwed that up. And I've liked him since he's come back. He's a good, chicken shit heel.
That's my term.
He's good at the character he plays. Going to talk about something else I thought he was just awesome at a little bit later when he was in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the overall segment was a horrible, horrible, horrible waste of time and talent.
Right.
And just bad. I mean, bad like those commercials. I understood when they first started why they were doing the commercials because they didn't have any. But now, they get real commercials in there because they've got enough views to where YouTube puts commercials in there.
Mm-hmm.
So please, for the love of God, drop that stupid shit and put more time into the show. And this was just horrible. It was long. They could have done it quickly. They could have just come out, been in the ring already, gotten ready. He could have done his delay, his stop, his, whatever. And then he could have got hit by the board by Ricky Starks, which, by the way, I don't think there was one person who did not know that it was Ricky Starks under those masks.
It wasn't a tweet from me, but a tweet from a friend who said his wife knew immediately it was Ricky Starks. When my friend asked his wife how she knew that, it was because of his posterior. So moving right along.
Well,
okay,
I thought it was the tan.
Yeah, that's not how I knew it.
What about the moment where question mark, quote unquote, slaps Ricky with the thing on and his mask almost comes off.
Oh, you know what? I must have blinked because I don't remember seeing that.
Well, I just thought that was pretty funny.
And that was one of those moments I also let you know that the mask was designed to come off easy.
Yeah.
Or some are tied and they're meant to stay on when pulled. That was meant to come off when pulled. And so, I mean, it sucked, people. But
yeah.
I'm sorry, there's nothing else you can say about it. It sucked. It was bad. They shouldn't have done it.
Right. And I guess this is because I want to save plenty of time for the main event. So I'm good with I'm good with moving on. Aside from one more quick plug for my boy Ricky, always great to see him on the show, and I'm pulling for him here on Friday, excuse me. Pulling for him here on Friday. It's gonna be fun to watch him and Matt Cross, and hopefully I can see him wrestle 3 times because that would put him in the finals of the television title tournament. And another weird commercial follows this segment.
Yeah, I didn't even write this one down. I wasn't really paying attention. I just want to fast forward. We've got 8,561 people watching the show, which is about where the show trends usually after an entire hour, and we still have a lot more wrestling to go. So this is a good news for the NWA. This shows that people are watching, and unlike the last season finale, this has actually been having a payoff, and there's been some pretty good wrestling. Yeah, we have some storyline business that they have to take care of, but for the most part, the wrestling we have had has been pretty good. And I will say that this last chance gauntlet for for Dave Dawson's spot was actually pretty good. The setup for it was a little weird because, again, the Dawson brothers just wrestled a few weeks ago. One of the Dawsons still has a broken hand thanks to the wild card, and it looks like they're have no plan to try to get reparations for that one. So we start off with this gauntlet to kind of fill that Dawson spot, and the first person we get out is C.W. Anderson, who, again, I forgot was even on the show. I was kind of shocked to see him. I said, oh, wait, yeah, he was on the first episode. Then we get Caleb Conley, who is we love him on this show. We're going to try to get him on it at some point. And they start off having a pretty good wrestling match. You guys want to chime in? What did you think so far of this of the gauntlet?
This is going to appeal more to my technical wrestling, having had been as a wrestler. The little, maybe I guess you'd say, the inside the mind of a wrestler. I don't in a battle royal, even at the opening, having wrist locks and arm bars and that type of stuff, psychology wise, I can't imagine like a Fit Finlay or a Dean Malenko or an Arn Anderson agent not taking these guys after the match going, what in the world are you out there doing, exchanging arm bars and wrist locks in a battle royal? It's typically just not standard format for a match like that. And so, again, I of course, obviously, I was, for half my career, pound for pound, the best wrestler in the world, and mat wrestling was my thing. But this was not a time for that sort of thing. Again, once you compare the speed of this match when compared to the speed of the Latimer and Trevor Murdoch match, this is where I say, hey, guys, this is TV. This is a battle royal. This is not the time for the pace of a match that's going to go 25 minutes.
Yep.
It's just my take on it. DK, what do you think?
Yeah, what I really want to know is why can't they have the wrist locks and hookups and everything in the regular matches? It amazes me. And I want to make one thing kind of clear here. They called it a gauntlet, but it wasn't a true gauntlet.
Mm-hmm.
Because a gauntlet's when two guys wrestle and when one loses, they send in another.
This was more like a battle royal.
Or a Royal Rumble style battle royal.
It was a mini Rumble is what I call it.
Yeah.
Because a battle royal, of course, they all start in the ring together. Exactly. So it was a mini Rumble. And so with that, I'm like, Kevin, the idea is to eliminate people as quickly as possible and save your energy when you're the first two people out there.
Yep.
And so, I'll go ahead and go to the next person that came in because it was quick.
Right.
But they're kind of wrestling each other, and then Josephus finally makes his return.
Which like, I'm sorry, but it's like I thought Josephus at some point was a major contender for the world title. Like, as far as I don't know 100%. I wasn't following the NWA as closely then as I am now. But I mean, him and Tim Storm had a pretty well known match as far as I know, right? And I mean, he was a legit contender.
Well, they had 3 well known matches,
right? And to go from that to 2 seconds in playing Santa Claus, and then 2 seconds in a battle royal, huh?
What? Well, for me, there's 2 things at play here. When they started him out, they were kind of doing like a Bray Wyatt cult leader thing, which was a horrible gimmick.
Right.
And I didn't like it. I didn't like the way they did some of the things. I'd said about him that when he was, as part of Saw and some of the independents there in Tennessee, it was a good place for him. In the current NWA, he'd probably make a good mid-card wrestler. But they kind of overextended his stay at the top of the card where he did not need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've kind of taken him to this, stupid, goofy character that Jaden always thought he was. Hi, Jaden. Yeah. And so, he comes out, he runs into the ring, the other 2 just throw him out immediately. It was a waste of a person in the match. It did nothing. I don't blame this one on Josephus. I blame this on booking. In fact, really all my issues with Josephus have more to do with booking than they have to do with him.
Right.
I guess I should make that clear. So when I say I don't like Josephus, I should say I don't like the way Josephus has been booked.
So let's get back to the match. Clearly, this was used as an opportunity to elevate somebody to get them into the pay-per-view. Again, the entrance order was C.W. Anderson, Caleb Conley. We get Josephus, who's quickly eliminated, followed by Colt Boom Boom Cabana. We get Shooter Stevens, a third-degree national champion, who has that excellent strategy to just dive out of the ring and hide for cover. We get Sal Renaro, who probably is the best he's looked in a ring for the NWA. And we get Mr. Anderson. And then we get a Zicky Dice promo. There's 80,800 people watching, and we get a Zicky Dice promo in the middle of a gauntlet, basically saying, I don't have to be in the gauntlet because I'm in the tournament, so sucks to be you guys. And it just pointless. Where if you're trying to conserve TV time again, well, what does that do for anybody? Nothing.
That's how he said it.
Well, that's his thing. Like that,
because when he came out and said it, he made it sound like he was supposed to be in the gauntlet. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to bless you guys with my appearance in the gauntlet because I don't have to. Because I'm like going, well, what the hell, dude? I mean, none of us were expecting you to be in the gauntlet.
Well, they did say it was an 8-man gauntlet to start the show off, and then only 7 people entered the ring.
But I mean, what would have been the logic for him to be in there?
Right.
He was already in the tournament.
That's a good point.
This was a last chance gauntlet. He had a chance already. If he had won, then what?
Actually, I made a mistake. I misspoke. Let me correct myself. There was 8 men in there because I forgot about our buddy, the other brother, Dawson.
Okay.
So, let's go through the order of elimination. We'll finish talking about the match. But first, obviously, Josephus goes first. The Dawson goes second. I have here... I don't even know what I wrote there. I can't read it. But he gets eliminated. Renaro gets a mic check. He's out. Conley gets a mic check. He's out. Then we've got C.W. Anderson who gets the Superman pin. He's out. Stevens decides to come back into the ring. We get more silliness with the question mark who does the double throat thrust. Luckily, the 2 heroes, Ken Anderson and Colt Cabana, are able to dodge it, which means Stevens gets it. Then he gets tossed. And then Mr. Anderson does that quick roll-up on Cabana, and they start teasing a turn, and then they kind of push it back. Well, cooler heads prevail. Cabana Anderson. The friendship's intact. And then we get more mic checks on the outside with Cabana getting the finisher to the floor and then a finisher to the steel post, doing two things. One, establishing Ken Anderson in the title tournament, and two, letting us all know what we kind of understood already, that Mr. Why Would I Be Bitter is actually bitter, and he is a heel. Kevin, let's go through this one real quick. What were your thoughts on the match?
Not a fan of pinfalls in any kind of battle royal.
Agreed.
Any kind. Having been in locker rooms and having heard many an egotistical wrestler who doesn't give two flips about what's good for the show or what's good for the audience or good for the stories of what maybe what the promoter or the booker's trying to put out there, and all they care about is getting their crap in. This looked like somebody wanted to get mic checks in. Somebody didn't want to get thrown over the top. It's a head scratcher, and to me, it looks like one of those deals where you had wrestlers booking, wrestlers saying no or something, because the pinfalls didn't add anything to the match. They didn't make any sense. Having Cabana lose to a roll up. How many roll ups did we have win matches in this show? Would this be number 2? The first one with a trunks pull by Trevor Murdoch. Now you have another roll up
here.
No, but you have another roll up with maybe, I don't know, but with Anderson, right? And you have the same roll up again and again now, and we're gonna get to the main event later, and it's kind of go, okay, guys, this is TV. This is not like a house show. It's supposed to be old school. You're like old school wrestling. You would never do something like this, at least not get crapped on by the boys in the back. So I kind of go, this just looks like a lot of non-cooperation, more than likely from the wrestlers themselves, or a booking crew afraid to make somebody mad. I just don't get it. Anyways, Karen, moving along. I wasn't a fan of the Battle Royal just because of the pinfalls, not because of the outcome, but because of the pinfalls. We knew this was coming with Mr. Anderson and Colt. So, there's my more than 2 cents.
Cam?
Well, I think Kevin hit everything that was wrong with it. So I'll let that stand on its own. I will say 2 good things. One, Aaron Stevens bouncing off the ropes after he got hit by those thrusts, where he was just as firm as a wooden beam and just kind of bounced. But I thought that was brilliant. I loved it.
The rigor mortis kicking in.
Yes, just stiff as a board. And you knew he had to be doing something to do the bouncing, but it didn't look like it. And I don't know. I just thought that was so good. And then, ignoring how it ended, I actually loved the beatdown at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if all this, and I'll admit, I watched episodes 1 through 6. I saw the first episode of this new season because I thought I might have to talk about it. And I watched this episode, so I've only seen half the shows or whatever. But that was probably my favorite moment in any of the shows. because to me, that was the classic old school wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
In that this is what the heel does when he turns. He beats the crap out of the baby face.
Yeah.
Right.
He beats him up on the floor. He throws him into the ring. I mean, and Kevin said something, one of the last things, DKM liking heels and faces, and it hasn't been that way for 30 years. Well, it kind of has. Fans haven't always cheered the faces and booed the heels the way typically. But you look at any organization, MLW, ROH, Impact, even WWE, NXT, there's still a pretty clear delineation of what's a face and what's a heel. I mean, even back in World Class, when Gino Hernandez and Chris Adams teamed together, they were almost as popular as the Von Erichs, even though they were the heels and fighting against the Von Erichs.
Right.
And so, I mean, there's always been a little bit of crossover, but there's no question what Ken Anderson is now. He was a heel. He acted like a heel. He did what heels do. Cabana did what baby faces do. It was good. I got invested. I liked it.
All right.
Mikey likes it. Let's get to the next part. We have 8,800 people watching the show, which again, this is now we're creeping into unmatched territory. I don't think they've had this many people watching the show since the first episode. We get a tag team. We get the tag team of Eli Drake and James Mother effing Storm talking to Marquez about and this is where I get confused. Talking about the chances Morton has against Aldis. This is one of the tropes of NWA Power I despise. This is what kicked off the whole angle between Ricky Morton and Nick Aldis. Why does anybody care what the trajectory of a certain wrestler is or how they're going to fare against somebody else? Drake and Storm should be out there complaining why they got left off this pay-per-view, where their shot in the TV title is, that they want a shot at the tag champions, whatever. Eli Drake is basically crowning Ricky Morton as champion. The baby faces are being baby faces. James Storm steals lines from the movie Talladega Nights, saying that Ricky Morton's all hyped up on Mountain Dew, and that he's going to come at him like a spider monkey. And then he leads the audience in a prayer for Ricky Morton to win. God, you know what, guys? I do know this, that God doesn't answer everyone's prayers. And thankfully, we'll get to that later. But thankfully, we'll get to that later. Is there anything you guys want to add to that recap?
It was a great promo. Enjoyed it. It was fun. I could agree with all your points that you made, but I like these two guys as a team as it stands. Not where I'd like to see them in terms of being some of the top singles wrestlers that they've got right now. I think there's going to be more, but as a whole, I mean, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good promo. It was fun. It wasn't a bad segment. I like both those guys on the mic. I obviously have pulled no punches in terms of saying how much I really think Eli Drake should be at the very, very top of this card every single time. But, I enjoyed it.
DK?
It made me laugh. I guess that's what it was designed to do.
I mean, I think that's what it accomplished. Don't get me wrong. There is room for comedy. But again, this show is 90 minutes long, and I don't know that it needed to. If you start cutting out some of this stuff that wasn't 100% necessary, we could have had an hour-long show. I get why they filmed so much, because I don't think they wanted a repeat of last season. But again, anyways, we have matches announced for Hard Times, and this is we've finally got the meat and potatoes of this show. I already bought Hard Times a couple weeks ago. Got it for that $14.99 price tag. I know a lot of people also jumped on that because, one, I guess we've trusted the NWA enough to put on a decent show, but two, everybody loves a bargain. And we just now get these card lineup announced. Now, we knew Nick Aldis was going to be facing Flip Gordon, but there is no 10 pounds of gold in that match. As far as I know, as far as what I've read, that is not a title match. It's just a match, an interpromotional match. what we do get new information is, on top of that, because Alison Kay won the right to face Thunder Rosa, we're going to have that matchup as well for the women's championship. We do know who Ricky Stark's opponent is. It's going to be Matt Cross. Matt Cross is a phenomenal talent, and that match is going to be great. Next, we get Zicky Dice versus Dan Moff, which I always thought it was Math. He cuts a promo, which is very intense and tends to know his NWA history, so kudos to him. We get a tag team championship match with the Rock and Roll Express. If Ricky does not successfully win the title, they'll be forced to defend the tag titles against the Wild Card, who haven't done much in a couple of weeks, and they take on Eli Drake and James Storm. So looks like they will be involved in the pay-per-view. And lastly, we get the bizarre announcement of our third-degree national champion, Aaron the Shooter Stevens, versus Scott Steiner. Now this is where I get frustrated with the product, and we've all been airing our grievances, so now I'm going to air mine. Why is Scott Steiner, who won, hasn't won anything yet, taking on Aaron Stevens for that national title? I mean, Scott Steiner hasn't had a single one-on-one match since joining the show, and to be honest, Aaron Stevens didn't have too many matches leading up to his shot at the national title. So it kind of makes sense, but this is another booking decision that just has me scratching my head. Kevin, what do you think about the lineups? What do you think about that national title match?
I like the lineups as a whole. Not a big fan of of where Scott Steiner is right now in his in-ring stuff. But hey, as long as he doesn't take the title home, and it wouldn't hurt to have a good prestigious win underneath the belt of Aaron Stevens. So I mean, I'm with you. Not a fan of the match. Not probably what I would do with my wrestling show. But hey, it's not my wrestling show. So it is what it is. I mean, I hope, and this is probably a terrible thing to hope for. I hope it's just an advertised match that never happens and we get somebody else.
That might happen too.
Get people to buy the show and want to see Steiner, and then in all not have that match, and maybe have something a little more interesting.
Yeah. DK,
do you really want to know my thoughts?
Yeah, for the card, yeah, absolutely, I do.
All right. Why you put Nick Aldis in a non-title match? It's beyond me. It doesn't make sense. I'm okay, I guess, with the tag team match, although I hate triple threats for titles. It's always bad when the champion can lose the title without getting pinned. Honestly, I hope Drake and Storm win.
Agreed.
I mean, they kind of need something to do while they wait on Nick Aldis, who's probably going to be busy with the ROH contingency for a while.
Yeah.
So might as well put the title on them. They've ruined Wild Card. And my gosh, please get the titles off Rock and Roll.
Thank you.
As for if you paid for the pay-per-view early and you got the $15 deal, you're going to get your money's worth out of Matt Cross and Ricky Starks.
Right. For sure.
So, I mean, at least your money has been well spent just for that one match.
Yeah.
We can only hope that Dan Moff, General Tarkin, whatever his name is, does exactly what we all want to happen to Zicky Dice. And, hey, I think they were looking the other day and they go, hey, wait a minute. What are we going to do with Scott Steiner? We got to have a name on the pay-per-view. What are we going to do with him? We need to do something with Scott Steiner. Who can he wrestle? He can challenge Aaron Stevens for the title. Whoa, okay, that sounds great. Are we going to do anything to set it up? Yeah, we don't need to do anything to set it up.
Nope, just announce it.
We just need Scott Steiner on this show. Sorry, did my Vince McMahon there for a minute.
I love your Vince McMahon. I hope it becomes a regular part of the show. We've got 9,000 people watching the setup for Nick Aldis and Ricky Morton for the 10 pounds of gold. Guys, 9,000 people for this show. That's a big number. That's 1,000 more people than normal. I also want to point out that it's been 1 hour and 19 minutes and 6 seconds to get from the show starting to this match. It's 4 minutes after they flash the logo before the two actually lock up. William Patrick Corgan, who is the president and owner of the National Wrestling Alliance, wants to be ringside for this matchup because it's so meaningful. That's a work. It's got to be, because this match feels like garbage and it smells like garbage. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be garbage. William Patrick Corgan declares that he wants strictly business and Gibson to head to the back, that no seconds will be ringside because he doesn't want any interference, which I think is, look, I get it. He's the president, so why wouldn't he do that? He's got to flex his power every now and then. Somebody, all the wrestlers are flexing what authority they have in the NWA. Why not the owner? The match place to this matchup is slow. It's methodic. Aldis was moving at a slower pace. I'm just gonna say it. It's not that he's wrestling a guy who's lighter than him, because we saw when he wrestled Ricky Starks that the match pace was much better. And it's not like because it was a championship match, he wrestled Cody Rhodes, who by all intents and purposes is about the same size as Ricky Morton. And he kept up with Cody. He had a match with Marty Scurll just back in
April.
Thank you, April, man. And that match was terrific. We had a guy who could move a lot faster. And Aldis should be the power in any match that he's in, unless he's facing someone much, much bigger. And there's very few wrestlers in the world today who make our champion, the national treasure, look small. Again, this was a much slower pace. Both matches that I saw Aldis in before, he used his height and weight to his advantage. This match wasn't the case. And I felt like, I've seen him wrestle some of the best in the world. Went all the way to China to see him wrestle Colt Cabana. Saw him wrestle Bad Dude Tito in Hollywood. Got to see him wrestle Marty Scurll. Got to see him wrestle Nick Aldis. Excuse me. I said Nick Aldis. I meant Cody Rhodes. And all of a sudden, a 63-year-old Ricky Morton is too much. That's too much to me. The match ends with what? A roll-up.
Oh, it was a roll-up, man. Big shocker. Yeah, big shocker there. I mean, in a way, it kind of was a shocker to me because, I mean, for one, I don't know what Ricky Morton on a regular basis is doing with his mouth. I don't know if it's maybe what are those dentures? Maybe he's trying to keep the dentures in. And at this point, I don't really care. I don't really care if it sounds rude. If I'm noticing it, other people are noticing it. And I don't know. You guys know how I feel. I respect the legacy of the Rock and Roll Express. I have shared hotel rooms with Robert Gibson, though he probably wouldn't remember. Done wrestling. I've actually wrestled these guys. And I've lost all respect in terms of just, there's a point where you as a wrestler, for the sake and respect of the business, you say no. You say no. knowing that the promoters are going to take they're going to take the draw that you're going to bring. You know, they're going to take it, but you gotta have some self-respect and have some respect for the business. And you know, I just NWA, I don't know. This is one of those things where I just kind of go, what are we doing? You know, we got a 63-year-old man backing down the world champion who's 260 pounds in best shape of his life. It looks stupid. Had it been a match where maybe you see kind of like the Latimer Murdoch match, and you see Nick just steamroll him, and maybe Morton's fighting for his life, sure. But what I see is an old man using the business, using the levers that he has in the business to take advantage of a position that he's in, of a young company. And I say young, not in terms of age, but in terms of where they are in terms of development. You know, taking it and using leverage to get himself over, and it's just garbage to me. I just can't even respect it. Maybe I ought to stop now, because I do like Nick Aldis. I do like the NWA. I am a fan of a lot of what they're doing right now, but I think I reflect the same sentiments of all of us in this conversation. I can't wait for the Rock and Roll Express's run in the new NWA as it stands to end and not start ever again.
Yeah.
So that happened.
I mean, look, I could have, if you told me, hey, the match is starting, I could have shut it off. And with you guys listening, watching it, I could have told you everything that was going to happen.
Right.
I mean, I would have said, hey, they're going to lock up, and, you know, all this is going to push them off. And then, you know, at some point there's going to be you know, Ricky's going to get a punch in and stuff like that. When going back to the very beginning of the show, when Robert Gibson came out, we watched him walk out from the back, and, you know, the camera was on his back, and he was walking like an old man.
Because he is an old man.
Because he's an old man. And Ricky was in it. But, I mean, you know, it looked it.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's not like some people who you go, wow, you know, they're spry for their age.
Right. Tim Storm. I mean, Tim Storm still looks like a guy that'll put you down and beat you down. I mean, he still carries himself like an athlete.
And there's a point I want to make with that too, but just to kind of wrap up this, you know, Ricky Morton looked old.
Yes.
He is old.
And he should not have looked as good as he did. Nick Aldis should not have had to pull tights.
No.
And got a surprise victory.
Oh, and hey, and let me tell you something else. This is the scene in the locker room. I wasn't there. Obviously, I wasn't there. But I bet I can find out, because I know people in that locker room. I bet I can find out. I bet you money. I would be willing to bet you a finite amount of money that when they went back to the locker room after that, there were high fives and way to go, Ricky, and guys, that was great. Bullcrap, man. It wasn't great. Nothing that they have done since I've seen them in the National Wrestling Alliance on the TV show, nothing that the Rock and Roll Express has done has been great. Maybe had a couple good moments. And again, you know, if you want to bring in Nikita Koloff and, you know, and who's one of the other old dudes that pops up on the show here every now and then? Scott Steiner. There we go. Bring Scott Steiner and throw Scott Steiner out there with tagging Nikita Koloff, and they want to wrestle the Rock and Roll Express in a Legends match like they do in Japan. Hey, man, you know what? Fine, give them 8 minutes and have an old school match or something. That's fine. I mean, it really. again, I'm from this, you know, like I spent a lot of time in my life doing this. And I know that in the ring and in the career and it's hard and we respect each other. But at some point you respect the business and you do the right thing for the business, not what's the right thing for you. And that's just what I see, you know, that's just how I feel about it. And it's just, you're not going to get me to back off on it. And, you know, it's probably going to be one of those deals that, hey, the NWA will move on. It will carry on because it seems like it always does. And, you know, hopefully we just don't have to look at this kind of thing anymore. And we can see the top talent in the National Wrestling Alliance, the now talent, the guys and the girls in their prime, having matches on main events that actually makes a little bit of sense. And
I want to point out something here. That there's a difference between what your age is and when you're in your prime. We talk about Tim Storm. Tim Storm's 54, I think. 53.
53.
But Tim Storm did not hit his prime until he was like 48. And he's still towards the end of it, but he's still in that prime years of his career. Even though he's older.
Right. And he looks it.
Right. A lot of guys, they hit their prime in their 30s. You know, they've been wrestling about 10 years or more, 10 to 12 years. They're experienced. And so they hit their prime there in their 30s, late 20s or whatever. Some hit their primes earlier. I mean, Tommy Rich was in his prime about 23. Yeah. He was past his prime at about 27.
Yeah.
You know, seriously.
No, yeah. You're right.
Buzz Sawyer, pretty much the same thing. The Von Erich boys, we love the Von Erichs in Texas, but once they kind of got into their 30s, none of them were, you know, the ones that made it. Sorry.
Yeah.
But, you know, they were on the downslide at that point. So when we talk about wanting to see somebody in their prime, it doesn't necessarily mean, 25 to 35. It means when they were at their top talent-wise. Tim Storm is near his top talent-wise. Ricky Morton is 20 years past his top.
Right. Yep. And I mean, as we're talking, I'm watching this match, and I'm watching a 65-year-old Hurricane Rana and watching him look like a rickety old man trying to grab Nick Aldis's leg for the roll up. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, you know, Nick Aldis has been one of the best guys the NWA has had over the last year. And to subject him to a match like that, ridiculous. Just ridiculous. Let's get the belts off these guys and let's get them off TV forever.
So we're about a week away from more NWA Power, but we do have the pay-per-view this Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. I'm going to have to be watching that on a delay, but we hope you guys will check it out. If you are so inclined to order the show, please use the link that you'll see right here and below in the description. Kevin, DK, we're running out of time here, so let's wrap it up. DKM, where can the folks follow you on social media if they're allowed to follow you? Are you allowed to have followers?
Secret underground followers, yes.
All right.
If you want to find where I talk about wrestling the most and occasionally politics, you can follow me on Twitter at DKMFWTX.
Right there on the screen. And modern day hero Kevin Doglas, where can folks follow you on the social medias?
You can catch some of my old wrestling stuff on YouTube at Kevin Doglas 247. All of my up-to-date stuff, you can find me on Twitter at Kevin Lee, Lee Frazier, Frazier. That's my shoot name, brother. And then you can also find me under the same name, Kevin Lee Frazier, at Instagram. So again, it's that's where you catch all of my modern day stuff. Hey. And maybe I want to go out with my television title prediction, Ricky Starks. Let's go.
DK, throw your prediction out there. Who's going to walk away with the TV title?
Tim Storm.
Ooh.
Hey.
And just
he was the favorite at one time. Then all of a sudden, like everybody forgot. And
I'll just say Murdoch to break up the monotony. So Starks, Storm, Murdoch. That you heard it here first. One of us is right. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you watching the Alliance Guys podcast with the returning DKM. Thank you so much, DK, for being here. There's that chairs warmed up for you. I hope you'll be in it next time. And we'll see you at the matches.
I know I get my $20.
That's all for the show. Goodbye.